Hey everybody, in this tutorial I'll be going over the bottom die plate exercise for activity 4.8i. So make sure you go to the assignment page, scroll to the bottom, click on the link to the Google document for the exercises, and then scroll down to number 9, bottom die plate. And what we're going to be doing for this exercise is building half of the figure and then learning how to use the mirror feature to mirror the original half over a plane to replicate that half onto the other side. And then, of course, we'll be using some of the features that we already know. We'll be adding some holes and some rounded edges uh, and drawing the basic shape. So let's go ahead and get started. So hopefully you've gone ahead and logged into Onshape. We're going to go ahead and create a new document. We're going to call this document bottom die plate underscore our last name. And then we're going to click OK. As that loads up, again, we'll be greeted by our top, front, right side views. And again, we're going to be using the front work plane to draw our sketch. So I'm going to go ahead and hide the top and the right. And we'll just focus on our front here initially. So as I mentioned earlier, we are going to be building half of this. So we're going to be building just this half. So imagine there's a vertical line going down the middle of this figure and cutting it in half. So we're going to build one side of it and then again mirror it over after we extrude it. So we're going to start with those basic dimensions. So we're going to start with sketching a basic shape minus the rounded edges here, and then we'll add those fillets in later. So the height of the figure is 3.125. The overall width is 8.5, and then we have to add in a little bit of a shape here. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So what I'm going to do is start with a sketch, just like we normally do, and I'm going to select the front work plane. Once sketch 1 is there, I'm going to go ahead and change my view to front on my view cube. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Okay, now what I'm going to do is use the line tool to draw our shape. And I'm going to start it at the origin point. And I'm going to draw out everything kind on the left side of the origin point. So I'm going to draw a regular line. And I'm going to go up. I'm going to go over. I'm going to go up again. And again, I'm not worried again about the dimensions. We are going to dimension that. I just want to make sure it's lined up with the center. And then we're going to have a line going down the middle like that. Okay, so as soon as I clicked on the back on the origin point, obviously it grayed in, showing me that I have a solid profile. Now I'm ready to start adding in some dimensions. So the bottom of our figure from end to end was 8.5. So because I'm only building half of this, I'm going to dimension it by half. So that means I'm going to make the bottom edge 4.25. Enter. Okay. And then the height of the figure is going to stay the same. So our height again was 3.125. So that means now I'm going to dimension from the bottom edge to the top. We're going to make that 3.125. Okay. So now we got to get the other edges here and make sure that they are of the correct length. So let's see. Now most of these height dimensions are going to the center points of these holes here that we're going to be adding in later. So that's not helping us. So I got to scroll down to these detail views. Okay, so remember we looked before at a previous exercise where they had cutout sections with these little jagged edges and kind of a blown up view of certain parts of our figure, and that's what's called a detail view. So that's what this image is here, and that's going to help us because it's going to help us determine what the height is up into that ledge on the side here. And so the height of that is going to be 1.3125. So that's the next dimension we're going to do. And that's this edge right here. And we're just going to click on it, 1.3125. Enter. Okay, so we were pretty close there. And then we need the dimension from the outer edge to the vertical edge. So that's this distance here. And that's going to be 0.5625. So we're going to mention from here to here, and we're going to make it 0.5625. So that's going to shift it over some, okay? And then that should be the correct, because we have the overall width, and we should be good there. Okay, so now we have the general dimensions of our figure, and now we are ready to add in some of the rounded edges, all right? So let's start with the bottom corner here. Notice it has a radius of 0.5. You can see that right here. This bottom corner is going to have a radius of 0.5. So we're going to go ahead and add that in. So we're going to use the sketch fillet tool and click the bottom left corner. And we're going to double click on that and make it 0.5, enter. Okay. Now I'm going to go into this interior here, and that is showing us this interior curve here, and that's going to be a radius of 0.3125. So that's going to be this corner here. We're going to double click on that, and then 0.3125. So you might have to make some edits to the dimensions after you click. And then the top corner, again, is up. Let's see. Oh, it's right here on this section view over here. And we're going to have a radius of 1.375. 1.375. Okay, and so now that gives us our general shape of our figure, and now we're able to look back, and we're going to go ahead and extrude our part. And so we need to find the extrusion and the thickness of the part, and again on our section view down here, the extrusion is going to be 0.3125. So now we're going to go ahead and extrude. And if you're wondering why I'm not putting in the circles of the holes now, is because we're going to use the whole feature. So we're going to use points first. So we need to go ahead and finish our sketch first, extrude our figure. So let's hit isometric view and extrude our profile here. I'm going to point it in the opposite direction and then make that distance 0.3125. And hit check mark. So there is half of my figure, but I'm not finished. As I mentioned, we're going to add some points in to start adding these holes, and then we'll be mirroring the figure over. So we're finished with the front view. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the little eye on my features bar by front, and that'll hide that. And now I'm going to go ahead and start adding in some of my holes. So let's go back to the directions, because the directions had some information that we needed to know. And it says, we're going to be using the mirror feature, but it says add the large center hole to the front side and the other holes to the back. So the center hole here is going to go in the front, and then these other holes are going to go towards the back. So I'm going to go ahead and use the front. And if we look at the center hole here, notice it's a 0.5 through. So I'm going to go ahead, and we do need to locate it, okay? So we have to make sure we have the right dimension, and then also what the height is. So the height of that hole is actually going to be, if we look over here, 1.563. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a sketch on the front. Click on this surface here, change our view to front, zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to use the point tool. And then I'm going to place my point on the vertical edge, because I know it's in the middle, so I don't have to worry about that. And then I'm going to dimension from the bottom edge, or our origin point, to here, 1.563. Now that I have that dimension there, now I'm going to finish my sketch, and I'm going to use the hole feature, and I'm going to go ahead and click the center point here. It's going to be a simple through hole, so we're going to keep it at simple. We're going to keep it through, and we're going to keep it custom, and keep the dimension, or if you need to, you're going to change the dimension to 0.5 for the diameter. And then you're going to hit the check mark. Okay, so now if we hit isometric view, there is our center hole. Now, according to the directions, the remaining holes are going to go on the opposite side. So now we're going to have to rotate our view around. So I'm going to go up to the view cube, hit the top right corner of our view cube, rotate to this side, and now we're going to create our sketch on this side here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit sketch. I'm going to choose this view, and now change it to the back. And now I'm going to go back and look at our figure and our drawing to determine how many holes. So these holes here, I already have the center one, so I need one hole here, another hole here, and one above our center hole. So that means I'm going to add 3 more points. And you can tell this one in the middle here is in line with the center point, so that'll make it easier to line it up, and then we'll have to add some dimensions to it as far as distances go. All right, so let me just go ahead and put some points in, and then we'll dimension them. All right, so click on point, and I'm going to place this point here. And again, I'm going to come back and dimension these. So I know this hole here it's going to be lined up, so I'll put it there. And then the one, it goes right above it. So I'm not going to put it in the center. So you notice that when that box came up, I'm going to put it a little bit below that just to make sure, because I will be dimensioning that. Okay, so now the points are in. So now let's go ahead and focus on the dimensions. So let's start with this lower right one. So we need to know it from the bottom edge and from the right side edge what those dimensions are going to be to place the hole accurately. So for this hole, that's actually being in our detail view. So from the bottom edge, it's going to be up 1 inch. And then from the right edge, it'll be 0.25. So let's go ahead and dimension that. Click on the dimension tool. So from the bottom edge to the point is 1. And then from the right edge to the point is 0.25. Okay, now it's in the right spot. So now let's focus on this hole. So now we know the height is right because we knew it was lined up with the center. So now we're going to go ahead and just figure out what the width is. So go back to our drawing, and we can see from the outside edge it's 2.0625. So now we'll go ahead and dimension from the right edge to that point, and we're going to make it 2.0625. Enter. Okay. And then last but not least is our point above. So we just need the height of that. And that's going to be on our top view here. So it is going to be looking at that. And the extension line that we have here is 2.125 tall. So I'm going to hit dimension from the bottom edge to here and make that 2.125. Enter. Okay, so now everything is aligned, everything's ready to go, and so now we're ready to start adding our holes. So we're going to go ahead and finish our sketch. All right, again, I'll just kind of work from right to left here and start with the lower hole here. So let's go ahead and look at what that hole feature is. So notice the hole feature here is pointing, here's the leader line, and we have a 1/4 by 20 UNC through, so that's a tapped hole. And this time it's going to be a 1/4 with 20 threads per inch, and it's going to go all the way through. So let's go ahead and select that. So we're going to select our hole feature. We're going to select our hole. Okay, it's probably defaulting to our previous hole, which we did in the center, but that's not right. And so we're going to change this. We're going to change it to simple. We're going to change it to through. We're going to change it from ANSI. Okay, and this time it's going to be tapped. Okay, 1/4. So make sure you might have to scroll down to find that. 1/4. 20 threads per inch. Going to leave the percentage of the diametric engagement the same. And we're going to leave the diameter there the same because we already have the size of the threads that we need. And so that'll be there. And then we're going to go ahead and hit the check mark. Okay, now, once I added that hole, you'll notice the other points again went away. So to get those points back, we're going to undo the eye or uncover the eye for sketch 3. And that'll bring those holes back. So now let's do the hole here and let's look at that one. So that hole is in the section view here, and that is going to be a countersink hole. Okay, again, this symbol here, the little V here pointing down is the countersink symbol. So we're going to have a 0.3125 through with a 0.75 countersink by 86 degrees. So let's go ahead and select hole feature again. Let's select that hole. Okay, so now we're going to change it here. We're going to go to countersink. It's going to stay through. We're going to keep it custom. Okay, and now we have a 0.3125 and with a countersink of 0.75 and then a degree of 86 degrees. And now we're going to hit the check mark. Okay, and there's that hole. And last but not least is the top one here above our center hole. So let's focus on that. And that is going to be another one of our tapped holes just like we did before. So we can go ahead and select hole feature. And we're just going to select here. And now we're going to change it back. So we'll go simple through ANSI tapped 1/4 20 TPI and 201. That's good, and we're good there. All right, so there's our next hole. All right, so now we have all our holes placed. We have our figure drawn, and so now what we're going to do is go back, look at everything here. Looks good. All right, so now we're ready to mirror our part. So what we're going to do is take this half that we've created and mirror it to the other side. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go to isometric view. It's going to flip it back around. And now I'm going to use the mirror tool, okay, the mirror feature. And if we go at the top on our toolbar, this feature here is the mirror. Kind of looks like a U shape. And I'm going to click on that once. Okay, then it's going to want to do a part mirror, so we'll do that. And then it's asking for the mirror plane. The mirror plane is going to be one of the planes going vertically down the middle here. And when we click on that, notice it gives us a shadow view of what the other half will look like. So instead of doing all the work that we just did on both sides, we only had to do it on half of it. And now we just mirror it over and we add in the other half. So now we have two halves that are the exact same. They're perfectly symmetrical. And that's the advantage of using the mirror feature is when objects are symmetrical, you can just copy them right over. Now, we're not quite finished. We do have a couple little more details to add into this part. So let's go back to our figure here. If you notice, there is a 1 and a 2 here labeling these two holes. Okay, so we're going to add, I'm going to show you how to add text in and how to manipulate the text a little bit. And then also, if you notice at the bottom, there is what's called a chamfer, a 0.02 by 45 degree chamfer on the top and bottom edges. So we're going to go ahead and add those in as well. So why don't we do the chamfer first, and then we'll add in the two numbers as described. So a chamfer, very similar to fillet, where fillet rounds the edges. This is going to kind of do a more straighter cut of the edges. So we're going to go ahead and select chamfer, and it wants the entities to chamfer. So it wants these edges. So we're going to click on the face here. Actually, it just wants the edges, so we're going to have to select the edges. And it wants a distance and an angle, so it's a 0.2 by 45. It's a 0. Let me see. Is it 0.2 or 2.2? Let's double check. 0.02. That's why it's looking really big. All right, so we got to change that. 0.02. Okay, and then I'll select this edge here. So I'm selecting kind of all the edges here. Okay, and hit the check mark. And there is our chamfer. Looks good. And so now we're going to go ahead and hit isometric view. And now we're going to add in that text. So in order to add text, what you need to do is add a sketch again. So we're going to add a sketch. We're going to have to do this one at a time. So we're going to keep it on the front side. So I'm going to add the sketch in here. So this ends up being sketch 4. And I'm going to change it to the front view. And I'm going to focus on the number 1 first. So the number 1 goes on the left-hand side. And so I'm going to go ahead and check on the text box. And I'm going to place that number 1 down here. So I might zoom in a little bit more. So I'm going to click and drag open a text box. And then it's going to ask me for my default text. Now you can change the font if you want. But when I type in 1, watch what happens. It's immediately going to put that number vertical. Okay, and notice it's vertical here, but I don't want it to be vertical. I want it to be horizontal. So how am I going to change that? So I need to come up to my toolbar on my sketch, and I'm going to go up to the icon, okay, underneath linear pattern. So again, if linear pattern is presently defaulted to, click on that little down arrow and go to where it says transform. And then we're going to come over to our box here, and then we're going to grab this little, see how these little arrows pop up? So I'm going to grab this and move it, and we're going to make it 90 degrees. Okay, good. And then I'm going to hit enter. And I might need to click it. Now, if it doesn't quite go in place, what you can do is just grab that top edge and then place it where you want. Okay, and now I have it where I want. You can always resize it by grabbing one of the corners, make it a little bigger, a little smaller. You can always go back in and edit it. So we're going to go ahead and we added that one there. So let's see if we can do the other side as well. So I'm going to zoom out here. Let's see if we can go down to the other side. Then we can do one extrusion instead of doing it 2 at a time. So I'm kind of working my way down to the other side. So I'm going to add another text box. I'm going to do another one here. Okay. And again, what it's going to do is it's going to make the 2 vertical as well. Okay, but again, I'm going to transform that. So make sure transform is selected. Click on that. And then we're going to rotate it. But this time I want to rotate it this direction. So that way the 2's pointed the other way. Okay, make sure it's 90. And then left click again. And then again, grab that top edge. Place it where you want. So make it just a little bigger. Okay, so made it a little bigger. Okay, good. So now I'm going to go ahead and finish my sketch. Okay, so and hit isometric view. So now I should have a 1 and a 2 here. Okay, and so what I'm going to go ahead and do is then extrude those out. So we're going to make them a little bit bigger. So I'm going to hit extrude, and I'm going to choose both numbers. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in. Just want to make sure I get the number. I don't want the whole face. Let's see if I can catch this number. Okay. A little afraid I'm going to get the whole thing. Okay, there's that one. Okay, so it's got the 1 and the 2. Good. So they're sticking out, but obviously they're defaulting to 1 inch, which we don't want. So I'm going to change that depth dimension to 0.02 and then hit enter. So a much smaller representation, and then hit the green check mark. So now they're kind of hard to see because they're the same color. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to right click on Extrude to. We're going to click Add Appearance to Feature, and then just change the text to black, and then hit the green check mark. Now they stand out. Okay, so now 1 and 2. And there you have our bottom die plate with the text boxes, the holes on different sides, and with the mirror feature. If you have any questions, please let me know.